Okay, this week, all week this week, you're going to be working with proportions. Proportions and percentages. Proportions and percentages all week. All right, and quiz 13 will be on Friday. So the first couple of problems on your worksheet today are going to be review problems from what we covered last week. And last week you had problems like 10 over 6 is equal to 25 over x. All right, a proportion is when you have a fraction equal to another fraction. And we said last week that to solve this proportion, you were going to crisscross multiply. Okay, and when you crisscross multiply, the first thing to do is take 10 and multiply it by x. And 10 times x is 10x. And then you make that equal to the product of 6 and 25. And 6 times 25 is 150. Okay, so the first step was to crisscross multiply. And then the second step would be to divide by 10. All right, so right here you would divide both sides of this equation by 10. And x would be equal to 15. Okay? In your assignment today, you're going to have a couple of word problems where you have to take the information in the word problem and set up a proportion. So one of the questions says that a van travels 260 miles on 13 gallons of gas. How many gallons are needed to travel 500 miles? Oh, let's make it 550 miles. So this is where you use proportions to solve an everyday problem. So your first step is to write a proportion. And your proportion that you're going to write is going to be miles to gallons. Okay? Miles to gallons. So if the van can travel 260 miles, all right, so 260 miles using 13 gallons. You went miles to gallons, so 260 over 13. You're going to make that equal to miles, which is 550, over gallons. We'll call it G. So you're going to take the given information from the word problem. You're going to write a proportion because you know how to solve proportions. Okay? So 260 miles on 13 gallons, you make it equal to 550 miles over G gallons. So now you can crisscross multiply. And when you crisscross multiply, 260G is going to equal 13 times 550. And that is 7150. Next step will be to divide by 260. So if you divide both sides by whatever's in front of the variable, these cancel, and G, which represents your gallons, will be equal to 7150 still sitting in your calculator, so you can push divided 260. And you're going to need 27.5 gallons for that trip. So if your car has a 15-gallon tank, you're going to have to fill up before you leave, and then you're going to have to fill up one more time before you get there. All right, in the second part of your assignment today, you're going to be finding percentages. All right, and when you're finding percentages, you're going to use the proportion. You're going to use the proportion is over of. That's an S up there, not a 15. So that's is over of equals percent over 100. Is over of equals percent over 100. So if you are asked what percent of 20 is 6? What percent of 20 is 6? You're going to write a blank proportion first. So you're going to put fraction bar equals fraction bar. And on the bottom right hand corner, you're going to write 100. It always goes there. The 100 always goes in the bottom right. And then you're going to find the is that's in the problem. And in this problem, what percent of 20 is 6? 6 is the is. 6 goes in the numerator on the left because is over of is going to equal percent over 100. The of in this problem, the of is the 20 because the problem says of 20. So 20 goes in the denominator. Is over of equals percent over 100. They're asking you what percent. You're trying to find the percentage, so you're just going to use P for your variable. So you're taking a question that they're asking you, you're pulling the information out, and you're going to write a proportion. And now you know how to solve a proportion, or you already know how to solve a proportion. You're going to crisscross multiply. So 20 times the p is 20p. And 6 times 100 is 600.
Now is there always 100 at the bottom?
There's always 100 in the bottom right. Okay? It always, see this? It always goes here. Here meaning here. So now you can divide both sides by 20. And your p is going to be equal to 600 divided by 20 is, you got those calculators? 600 divided by 20 equals 30. So that means, what that means is that 6 is 30% of 20. All right? 6 is 30% of 20 because your p was equal to 30. Your p is the percentage. Let's try another one. What percent of 110 is 28? What percent of 110 is 28? First step is to write basically a blank proportion. And what goes in the bottom right hand corner of the proportion? 100. And then the is goes in the numerator in the upper left. So is 28. So we got 28 is over of 110 is over of equals percent over 100. We're trying to find the percentage, so we're looking for p. So the next step is to crisscross multiply. So 110p equals 28 times 100. That's 2,800. Divide both sides by 110. Is it 25 even?
No, it's 25.45.
All right, so P equals 25.45.
Yeah. But wouldn't you round it up because...
Well, if you set your calculator to second fix 1, we can round everything to the nearest tenth. So
Yeah, 25.5.
25.5. So what that means is that 28 is 25.5% of 110. That's what's important. Okay? So you're going to be given information and asked to find information in a word problem. You're going to pull the given information out of the word problem and write a proportion. Then you're going to solve that proportion by cross multiplying. Any questions so far? All right, so a pair of shoes Normally costs. $69.50. Are on sale. For 40% off. What is the sales price? What is the sale price? So from this problem, you're trying to find 40% of $69.50, aren't you? And then you're going to subtract that 49% from $69.50. Does that make sense? Can anybody think of another way to do that problem? If they're taking 40% off the price of the shoes, what percentage of the normal price are you paying? Aren't you paying 60% of the normal price? Because they're subtracting 40%. If you take 100%, which is the regular price of the shoes, and you subtract 40%, you've got 60% left. So this is the sale price of the shoes. So you want to find what is 60% of $69.50. And that will tell you the sale price of the shoes. So you set up a proportion. Now, when you set up this proportion, you're going to write your generic proportion first. Fraction equal to a fraction, 100 goes in the bottom right. In this case, when you read this, what is 60% of $69.50? All right? You're trying to find the is. So this is your variable. The of would be 69.5. The percent is right here, 60%. So that's your proportion. From your proportion, you can crisscross multiply. So 100 times x is 100x. And 69.5 times 60 is 4170. If you divide both sides by 100, the hundreds cancel, and x is going to be equal to 41.7. If x is equal to 41.7, you can go back to the original problem. And the sales price would be $41.70. Does anybody have any questions?